Howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, a little change of scenery. Instead of sitting at my desk over there, I'm going to sit at my desk over here because it's very important what's about to happen over here today. You remember about a week ago I told you I completely crashed my domain controller because of some rookie mistakes that I made. And here lately I've been, and I have devoted myself, or I've dedicated myself to never having a virtualized domain controller again. And they're not a problem, but just for my particular circumstances, I don't like a virtualized domain controller. But I got to thinking, right now I've got my domain controller on that older Gigabyte motherboard with an i5 processor. Remember, I had two of those. The other i5 that I had with 16 gig of RAM is sitting right here. And this is my secondary workstation. And I had an epiphany last night because I want to try out a new piece of software, and I need to use that i5 that is in my server room for that purpose. And I don't have another computer to put my domain controller on. Or do I? It turns out I do have another computer to put my domain controller on. This one. This is the other gigabit. This is my old workstation. This is the one I did YouTube videos on for over a year, and good God, I've had this thing 5 years at least. But it's an i5. It's a 3470 processor with 16 gig of RAM. But it also has a GT640 video card in it. So I wanted to reserve that one in case my main rig ever broke down and I needed to edit videos somewhere else. Well, that never happens. This machine is just sitting here doing nothing. Or is it? So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to turn this machine down here into a Windows 2016 server running as a domain controller. Not only that, but we're going to put MakeMKV on there. We're going to put Handbrake on there. We're going to put a couple other tools that I use on a daily basis or weekly basis. So instead of this machine just sitting here waiting for me to come over and use it, we're going to make it our Windows domain controller. Why not? Windows Server 2016, Windows 10, they're the same kernel. All the programs that run on Windows 10 should run on Windows Server 2016 without a problem. And it'll allow me to utilize this machine for other things other than Active Directory. Really, Active Directory, DNS, DHCP in a small environment like I have, even in larger environments, is not really impactful on system resources. And that leaves the machine free to do other things should I want to do them, like rip a Blu-ray, or how about converting DVDs into MP4 files so that Plex doesn't have to transcode them on every device I play it on, that kind of thing. So that's the method to my madness. So let's get started and we'll see how this ends up. So the method to my madness, the plan is to do it as follows. I have got that Windows domain controller on that beige box in the server room. Here, take a look at it right here. Let's go into the server closet. Turn on the light. Okay, this is our domain controller. Just backed it up. I shut it down. Now this is the backup drive, so I'm gonna pop this out. Now, this is one of the reasons I went from this kind of drive bay enclosure to this one, because this one is toolless, so I don't have to pull the damn screws out of this rail to put it in this other machine. But with this one, I do. And then I have this box behind me. Here, take a look at it right here. You remember this guy? This was my daily driver in the in-win case. Nice little unit. It's got a Blu-ray and a DVD drive on there, and it's probably dirty as hell inside because it's been sitting on the floor and sucking in dog hair. So eventually we're going to find a better home for this, or a better place for it. And on the beige box in the server room, I have got a 5 drive bay on there, and I put a 500 gig hard drive in there. And what I've done is I've loaded Windows Server Backup, and I've run a bare metal backup on that machine, and I've backed up it to that hard drive. So it should be simply a matter of me taking the 500 gig hard drive out of there, putting in an external drive housing here, or I have a little drive tray on the top on the top of this machine, and it should be just a matter then of booting to the Windows Server 2016 USB key, going out and do a recovery and a bare metal restore. And the beauty of a bare metal restore is you can take the operating system, if it were on, say this were on an Intel Core i3 processor with different network cards and all that other jazz, I could take it off that machine, restore it on this one, and the HAL, or the hardware abstraction layer, would go out and redetect all the new devices, and Active Directory would be there. So it's like ghosting. If you ever ghosted or imaged a machine in the old days, that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. And what bare metal restore allows you to do is restore it to a machine with different settings, so, or with different hardware. So say that 5 years, you bought a Dell server, and 5 years, it's 5 years later, they don't make that server anymore, they have a new one. You could, in theory, do a bare metal restore onto that new hardware, and you'd be set to go. Now these machines, two machines, are identical, with the exception of maybe some DVD-ROM drive or DVD-read drives and a Blu-ray drive. But that should all be handled once we migrate the system over. So let's show you what I'm going to do to make that happen, and we'll go from there. All right, so here we are on DC01, MCS DC01. This is my current domain controller, and if I move my little window here out of the way, you can see that I haven't even activated Windows on this unit yet, because I knew it was going to be temporary at best. So the first thing I want to do is go under computer management and just show you all under disk management that I do have a 500 gig drive in here, in addition to the SSD drive that is in this unit, which will come into play later when we do something else with this box. It's going to be quite exciting. I'm excited about it. Anyway, I digress. So I've created a removable backup drive for this server, and I've already done a backup, but I'm going to show you what I did to do a backup. Now, if you don't have Microsoft Backup installed on your server, you'll need to go install that through Add Remove Programs under Server Manager. So if I were to bring up Server Manager, just show you here real quick, you'll need to go to Manage and Add or Remove Roles and Features. Next, next, next. You don't do it here, you do it on the next page. Go all the way down toward the bottom and you'll see Windows Server Backup is installed. So if you haven't done that already, you will need to do that. Alright, so now what we're going to do is go to Windows Server Backup. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and back up again. So I'm going to choose Backup Once, different options, next. I'm going to do a full server backup. I want to back up all my server data, applications, and system state. Next, I'm going to back it up to a local drive. I'm going to back it up to the backup drive D. Selected volumes also include the list of backups. Do you want to exclude this volume? Yes. It's very important. Make sure you exclude your backup volume, or you're going to be doing a double backup. So the backup items that it's going to do are bare metal recovery, local disk C, system reserved, and system state. So I'm going to go ahead and back that up. So now in theory, once this backup completes, I can shut down this server, take this drive over to another machine, boot off the Windows Server USB key, and do a recovery of my Active Directory. Alright, so looking at the screen, in theory our backup is done. So now what I should be able to do is shut down this domain controller, take this drive out, and mount it into the machine behind me, boot off the Windows Server 2016 install key, and do a recovery. So let's close this. Let's close the backup program, and then the next step would be to shut down the domain controller. But let's talk a minute before we do that. You want to make damn sure that everyone is logged off the network that you can. Now, my workstation, I'm going to leave it logged on because I'm not going to be doing anything. Because keep in mind that once the domain controller goes down, that's how people log in. That's how they get their DNS and DHCP settings. So your network is going to be in effect down for this period. So you want to make sure you don't have anybody that needs to log in or log out of their workstation. Have them log in and have them do their drive mappings, and then bring your domain controller down. I do not recommend you do this in a live environment. You need to take precautions, and you need to make sure your workstations are all down before you do this. But I live on the edge, so we're going to do it with workstations up and running. So what we need to do is take this drive out of its little drive cage, and you see on the top of this in-wind case I have this nice little feature where I can just slide a hard drive in there. So let's try that. And like magic, the hard drive comes out of the tray. And this, my friends, is why I never throw hard drives away. You never know. As long as the hard drive is still functioning, I don't care if it's 200 gig, 100 gig, 500 gig like this one is. I don't care if it's serial ATA2. I'm keeping this drive because you never know, I might need it for something. Sure as shit, I need it for a backup drive. And now, let's, here's where the plugs are, so let's slide this bad boy into place. Okay, we got a resounding click, so we should now be able to switch over to the PC. First things first, we want to take our Windows Server 2016 USB key and make sure that bad boy is plugged in to one of the USB slots on the front of the computer. And sorry that this camera cannot seem to focus today. There might be something on the lens. So there you go. Alright, now let's boot it up and see if we can get it to boot off the USB key and to see the hard drive we added. Okay, now we're going to press the F12 key, hopefully quickly enough, because that will bring us up to the boot menu. Now we hit F12. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to boot, you'll see there's a there's one of the DVD drives in, there's the other one, here's the Crucial SSD drive. I've got a Western Digital 1 terabyte in there. I've got the Kingston, that is my USB boot key, and then I've got the Samsung. So I want to boot off the Kingston and press any key to boot from USB. Now this should load up Windows Server 2016 so that I can do a recovery, a bare metal, if all goes well. And I apologize for the crappy camera work on this, but I guess it's better than not seeing it at all. So it's going to boot Windows off of that USB key, or it's going to boot Windows Server 2016. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and use English as our language. Normally we go to install now, but instead we're going to go repair your computer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to troubleshoot, and I'm going to do a system image recovery. Alright, so continuing on, I did have the correct USB key. What I didn't have was I had to go into FDisk and or disk part correction, and I had to delete the Windows volume that was on the SSD drive. And then once I booted into recovery mode, then it went out and it found a recovery image on another hard drive. So that's an interesting fact I wasn't aware of, is that even if you boot with a Windows Server 2016 USB key and do recovery, if it sees Windows 10 on there, it's going to try and do a Windows 10 recovery. Isn't that odd? That's very, very odd. But anyway, I digress. And if you want the, you can look up a tutorial on how to use disk part to erase a disk. But basically, it sees that I've got a system image out there. So it's going to use the image that was created on 2/1 of 2018 at 12 o'clock. Okay, that sounds about right. Today is February 1st, and it's the computer's MSDC01. Let's go to next. Let's see, I want to choose disk to exclude. I'm going to exclude this one and this one. I don't want it to touch these two drives. Now it even says that the Samsung is already excluded as it contains a system image to be restored. But I don't want it writing anything to my Western Digital or to my Kingston. Let's see, and it should be, I should just click next, date and time, 12/1, drives to restore. Click on finish. Yes. And then I should just be able to let this run. And hopefully when we come back, it'll be ready to reboot. And then we should boot into our domain controller, and then we should be able to verify that everything is working properly. Now it's set to restart in 51 seconds. I'm going to tell it don't restart. because I want to turn it off completely. And what I want to do is I want to disconnect the USB drive, which I've done. I've unplugged it. And I'm also going to take out the recovery drive, the Samsung that I had in there that had the image on it right here. And we're going to leave those sit out to the side. Now, I'm going to turn the unit back on, and let's hope it boots off the internal SSD drive. Now make damn sure you don't have your old domain controller up and running when you do this, because it could create a really serious situation. So let's see if it boots into Windows Server 2016. It may have to detect some devices, some drivers, I don't know. We'll see. I have not done this in years. I have not done a bare metal restore in years, but you can see it's detecting devices. It tells me it's applying computer settings. I don't know if that's a good sign or not. Well, it used to be in the old days when you had to do a Active Directory restore or a bare metal. Oh, it was a beast. I can remember doing a migration for a client that took me the better part of an entire weekend. All right, I don't see a bad little indicator on my network connection. It is prompting me to log in. Adama at MCS Local. Let's see if I can actually log in. Well, it looks like it's working. Now the proof is going to be in the pudding. I'm not going to make you look at this horrible camera angle here. I'm going to switch over to my workstation and go into remote desktop and see if I can connect to this unit and finish configuring it and making sure everything works. So far so good. Do you see what I see? Alright, I'm in via RDP. Now let's just verify that this bad boy is actually running properly. So the first place I'm going to go is to this PC and properties. Okay, it sees it as an i5, 16 gig of RAM, 64-bit. It knows it's a domain controller. Alright, so it looks like it is up and running. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to reboot my local computer just to make sure everything comes back up and it logs back in without any errors. So I'm going to go ahead and end that session with the domain controller, leave it up and running, and we'll come back after I've rebooted. Let's just talk about crazy shit that can happen while you're working on your network. Now, I turned off the old domain controller. I know I did because I had to, because I took the drive out of it. Took the backup drive out, put it on my desk. The one behind me is now running Windows Server 2016. I restored it, did a bare metal restore. I rebooted a couple of times and it went in and redetected all the drives and CD-ROM and DVD-ROM drive. The only problem I'm having is with audio, and I think I just need to install a driver to fix that. But in the meantime, it was doing some really squirrely stuff. It was just kind of sitting there churning. You know, when I did a reboot, it didn't reboot. It didn't shut down on the RDP, on the remote desktop. So I went over there and physically logged in and shut it down. I walk back to my desk, I look in that server room, and I'll be damned if the old domain controller isn't on again. It turned itself back on spontaneously. So I went in there and finally flipped the switch on the power supply in the back so it doesn't boot up again. Don't ask me why. Now hopefully it hasn't broken anything. So I'm going to switch over and just show you now that we now have our hard drives in there, and we have our, it looks like the drivers are properly loaded. And you see the screen looks a lot different too, but it looks like we have our hard drives in there. There's the Western Digital 1 terabyte drive, and it also sees the DVD and the Blu-ray drive. Because what I was going to do was load the INF driver, but I don't think I'm going to need to. We'll see how the machine behaves. If it starts acting really weird, then we'll worry about that at that time. But the next thing I want to do is I want to get Google Chrome installed on here. So I'm going to do that through Internet Explorer. So let's turn enhanced internet security off. We'll go to Server Manager to do that. Go to the local server. Yeah, it's on, so I want to turn that off for administrators. Yeah, Joe, you're not supposed to do that on a server. I don't care. If you're careful and, you know, you should be fine. Google.com, you moron. There we go. Yes, I want it. Alright, let's download, accept and install. I don't use Internet Explorer unless I am absolutely forced to do so. Because Chrome just typically works better, even on Windows Server 2016. So that's what we're going to install. And the reason I'm installing this is because I want to download MakeMKV. And MakeMKV is constantly updated, and it gives you another 30 days. I just want to download MakeMKV and make sure that it's going to run on this server. So no need you sitting around watching this. I'll get this installed and we'll come back and do a MakeMKV install. Google Chrome is now installed, so now let's look for MakeMKV, because that is what I use to rip all of my DVDs and Blu-rays. So let's download it. Should save it. And once it saves it, which it's done, I should be able to then run it. No sound, but that's okay. Now, Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10, pretty much the same operating system underlying. It's about what software they put on top of it. So anything that runs under Windows 10 should run under Windows Server 2016. We're just going to verify that here. Cool. So it did run. Now, the one thing it's not letting me choose is cannot find any usable optical drives. That's concerning. Sometimes I'm a frickin' idiot. Run as administrator, folks. You have to right click on it and tell it run as administrator. And then it appears to see both the DVD drive and the Blu-ray. So on the DVD, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to open it. And I'm going to make sure that I can do a rip. This is a Disney DVD that I own, that I am ripping. But I want to make sure it's going to work. I don't need French, I don't need Spanish, but I do want the subtitles. To the root of the video folder, and then I'm gonna make the MKV out of it. So we'll come back when this is completed. Alright, so it appears to have ripped that DVD for me. So let's go out to the D drive and see if it is indeed out there. And it is. It's called Title 1. So I'm going to play with VLC Media Player. Now I'm not going to get any audio, but I should get, yep, and I don't want to get a copyright infringement, so I'm just going to go through these real quick just to show you. Look how smooth that is, even in a remote desktop session. Alright, so now that I've done that, I by the way, I installed VLC. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to try and install the sound card drivers. I know. I live life on the edge, don't I? I should probably do a backup before I do this of the server, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to see if I can install the sound card drivers on here. Alright, so I've extracted it. Let's see if it'll run. No, you know what? I need to probably run this as administrator just to be safe. Now, hopefully this won't hose my operating system. Now here's the deal. This driver is for Windows 10. Now this is a Windows 10 32-bit driver is what it said, but as you can see, it sees it as an x64, so let's keep our fingers crossed that it will work. Now it's probably going to make me reboot after installing these drivers. I probably should have done a backup, huh? I mean, this is my domain controller. But worst case scenario, I can always go back to restore my previous backup, and it shouldn't screw anything up too bad. You got to be that's one thing you got to be careful of is loading drivers on a Windows server. Sometimes, even though they're written for Windows 10 and the underlying operating system is the same, Windows Server wasn't really designed to be run, with sound card and graphics and all that stuff. It will work with it, but sometimes a little tricky getting it to work properly. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to tell it no. I'm going to finish because I want to do a reboot here on my own. But you can see that. Can you hear that? I have audio now. Woohoo! Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to restart that server. So hardware installation planned. Wish me luck. Well, it didn't crash, but let me see. There we go. Remote audio default device. Okay. Let's see if we actually have audio again. And we do. Alright, so let's go out and see if we can play some videos. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try some videos that I've ripped and put through Handbrake. 1,000, 2,000. So there's one of them.
So that's it.
Lovely, you can hear the audio, so we know that's working. Now let's come back to the one we just did. Yep. And there we go. So it is working. Audio's working. Now the video flickered for a minute, but that's probably because I'm on a remote desktop session. Now you're probably going to notice, though, if we go out to properties, that this video card is still not going to have a device driver loaded for it. And perhaps I'm wrong. Yeah, see, it still says Microsoft Basic Display Adapter, and I don't know that I'm going to jack around with that. It does see the Realtek high definition audio, and it does see the USB 3 host controller, so time will tell if we'll see that as a host. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop another drive in there, and I'm going to do another backup of my bare metal backup, just so that I have it in case something goes wrong with this machine. Alright, so we've ripped that movie, that Disney movie, so let's go to let's install Handbrake, and let's see if we can then run that video through Handbrake and see how long it takes to compress it into an H.264 file or an MP4 file. Actually, I probably should have launched that as an administrator. In fact, let me cancel this just to be sure. We're going to launch this as administrator. Bingo. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that MKV file. So I'll just go File, and I'll go to my D drive, because that's where it is, and there it is right there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is select Roku, because I always use these for my Rokus. Now when I do a high def video, I choose Roku 1080p 3D 30 surround, but for a regular DVD video I use Roku 480p, and I just leave all the settings as they are. The one thing I do, though, is I give it a location to save it to and a name. So I'm going to call this it's DuckTales the movie. Save that. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and start the encode. So the first thing it'll do is it'll scan for subtitles, get them done, and then it'll actually do the ripping of the video. So once that process starts, I'll cue the video back up so you can see its estimated time. So we have now started running this video through Handbrake, so it's going to convert it from a DVD to an MP4 with the Roku 480p settings under Handbrake. And it's estimating it's going to take probably 20 minutes to do this. Now, one thing you probably notice on my task manager is you don't see the NVIDIA GT640 video card on there being run, and that is because I haven't loaded any drivers. I don't know that that I can load the NVIDIA drivers under Windows Server 2016. So I'm going to do this rip not rip. I'm going to do this conversion of this DVD to an MP4 file, and then I'm going to try to load the drivers for the video card at some point, and do another conversion from DVD to MP4, and see if there are any time savings. Because you can see it's pegging out my processor at 100%, but that's okay, because this computer normally sits there and doesn't do anything anyway. So I'd rather have it. You can, the thing about Handbrake is you can batch encode files, so I can get my settings all set up, and then I can just do batch encodes and have it go out and convert videos that are in the problem I have when you use MakeMKV is all it does is it rips it into its native format. So it may put a file, create a file with an MKV extension, but it's actually still an MPEG-2 file. And here's the deal: anytime you get a format that comes through Plex that is not MP4 H.264, it's going to automatically transcode it. So what you have to do on DVDs is actually convert them to MP4s, and then they can direct play on your Roku devices and on most devices. Yeah, I believe my TiVos as well. They'll play without having to do they'll direct play rather than having to do transcoding. And the only time you really want to you need to transcode is when you're going to be using your videos on a mobile device. So if you're going to go on a plane trip or something. But the beauty of Plex is, without diving into Plex, is that you can create multiple versions of a video file. You can go out and create a version for optimized for mobile. So you can rip your videos as MPEG-2, and then you go out and convert them to whatever format you want. But I'm going to put it through Handbrake and just see what happens. So we'll come back when that's done and see how long it actually took, and see how the video turned out. And so if we look here, I think all told it took 16 minutes, 16.8 minutes. Not bad, huh? In 29 seconds. So not bad at all. Now that was only a 4, I think that file that it compressed was 4 meg, the original. Let's see here. It's called Title 1. So actually it was a 3 gig file, and it has now turned it into a 971 meg file. So let's play that real quick. Just make sure the quality's there. It is. Hey, YouTube, go ahead and catch me. That was less than 6 seconds. So it worked just fine. So there you go. We now have the ability to rip Blu-rays and DVDs. We have the ability to run them through Handbrake. And we also have the ability to do our Active Directory, our DHCP, DNS, group policy. And you can see if I just let the indicator sit here, just running Active Directory, no other programs running, I've got 1.6 gig of memory in use, and well, actually 0% of my CPU usage is in use at all. Now normally in a production environment you would never run Handbrake or MakeMKV on your domain controller, but I'm a unique kind of guy, and I am all about bang for my buck, and I have been looking for something for that. Remember, that was my old workstation for 5 or 6 years, and just like computers don't like to be idle. They don't like to be sitting there not doing nothing, and I don't like them sitting there just consuming electricity. So I now have a physical domain controller, and now I can take that beige box and use it for another project that I have in mind. I'm going to take my glasses off because I'm not being serious right now. So let's talk about what we did here. Normally we would not use our domain controller for ripping DVDs and running Handbrake on, but we're in the unique situation where this is my home lab and my work lab kind of combined here, so we can get away with things that we would probably never do in the real world. So take this video with a grain of salt, but you know, I've got all this hardware laying around. Okay, this is my old workstation. This was the unit I beat on for 5 or 6 years, and it just never failed me, knock on wood. And the reason I did this is because I have plans for that beige server that's in there, and that's just a carbon copy of this one. It's a i5 3470 processor and 16 gig of RAM. but I have plans for it, and I want to make some videos on another product that I've got to be in my bonnet about. So you can do this in your home lab. There's no reason why you can't. These machines today are just so overpowered, we really never use all of them. So this machine sits here sucking up electricity all day and not really doing anything, but now it has a task. And just like humans like to have something to do during the day, so do computers. So this is my domain controller, my DNS server, my DHCP server, my Active Directory server, my group policy server. And now it's a place where I can rip DVDs, Blu-rays, and run them through Handbrake if I need to. And I may even put Hyper-V on this server just so I can run a VM in there if I have some special need. But this just goes to show you the kind of flexibility you can have when you have a lot of hardware laying around. Put it to good use. That's what I've done. So anyway, we hope you found this video entertaining and informative as always. Leave your comments down below in the comments section. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, or a thumbs down, either way. And if you're so inclined, we take PayPal and Patreon donations. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget, we'll see you on the other side.